My wife kicked me out of the bedroom. Sleep on the couch until you buy me a car like my friends. I never thought I'd be the guy sleeping on a couch in my own $1.2 million house at age 40, but there I was, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. with a throw blanket that barely covered my shoulders. The thing is, this wasn't a sudden explosion. It was the inevitable collapse after years of slow foundation damage. When Samantha delivered her ultimatum over the BMW, part of me wasn't even surprised. It was just the latest escalation in our unspoken war of financial control that had been brewing for years. "Until you buy me that car, don't even think about coming back to our bed," she declared, arms crossed like a disappointed parent. Jessica's husband bought her the X7 without her even asking. What does that say about you? I should have pushed back. I should have pointed out that Jessica's husband had bought that BMW as an expensive apology for cheating. Instead, I just grabbed my pillow and retreated to the living room, a familiar surrender in our 12-year marriage. But something felt different this time, like I'd finally hit my limit after years of concessions. 3 days later, I made a decision that shocked even me. And when those car keys appeared on our kitchen counter, the fallout wasn't just about a vehicle. It was about finally seeing our marriage for what it had become. Updated. Thanks for the overwhelming responses. Many asked if I've been hiding money or planned this for months. Truth is, I've maintained separate investment accounts since before marriage, with her knowledge. The decision itself was impulsive. Have you ever reached a breaking point that suddenly made everything clear? The manipulations didn't start with car demands. They began with small things. Samantha pouting when I bought myself new golf clubs, but not something equivalent for her. Then came the scoring system. If I worked late 3 nights, I owed her a weekend shopping trip. If I chose a practical, anniversary gift instead of jewelry, I'd face days of subtle comments about her friend's husband who really knows how to treat a woman. Sometimes I'd resist, leading to arguments where she'd inevitably bring up how her father would have never hesitated to provide whatever her mother wanted. Her parents had modeled this dynamic perfectly. Her dad compensating for emotional distance with American Express, her mother wielding disappointment like a weapon. I had foolishly thought we'd be different. You never have to worry about the money, I tell her during our early marriage discussions. What I meant was, we're secure, we're building something together. What she heard was, spend whatever you want. The miscommunication compounded annually like negative interest. My own part in this dysfunctional dance? I avoided conflict. After 80-hour weeks analyzing risk for investment firms, the last thing I wanted was tension at home. It was easier to say yes to the $12,000 bathroom chandelier than engage in another conversation about deserving nice things. Each concession made the next one easier, until my role had been reduced to financial provider rather than partner. Meanwhile, her younger sister Emily lived in a different reality altogether. After her husband walked out when their son was 2, leaving her with nothing but debt, she'd rebuilt her life piece by piece. Working as a special education teacher at a public school in Westchester, she somehow managed to raise an incredible kid while furthering her education and maintaining her optimism. Her Hyundai Sonata had become something of a family joke. The duct-taped mirror, the squealing belt, the check engine light that had been on so long it might as well have been a permanent dashboard feature. What stood out about Emily wasn't just her resilience. It was her emotional intelligence. When my dad died 3 years ago, Samantha had treated the funeral like a networking event, subtly complaining about the modest service. Emily had sat with me afterward in Dad's garage, helping sort fishing tackle and baseball cards, sharing silence when needed and stories when appropriate. But Emily wasn't a saint either. She had her own struggles with boundaries, often taking on too much responsibility for others. She'd dated a string of unavailable men since her divorce, seeming to believe she didn't deserve better. And she could be stubborn to a fault, refusing help even when desperately needed, canceling plans if her ancient car broke down rather than asking for a ride. The sisters' relationship was complicated. Samantha simultaneously looked down on Emily's modest lifestyle while taking credit for her achievements. I always encouraged her to finish her master's, she'd tell friends, conveniently omitting that she'd never once offered to help with childcare during Emily's night classes. Emily, for her part, seemed to have accepted her designated role as the less successful sister, often deflecting compliments and minimizing her own accomplishments. I'd tried discussing this dynamic with Samantha a few times over the years, only to be shut down with accusations of taking Emily's side. Eventually, I stopped trying. The catalyst came in the form of Jessica Martin's new BMW X7, Arctic white with caramel interior, delivered to her driveway with a giant red bow like in the commercials. Samantha had invited Jessica over for lunch, on our patio, ostensibly to catch up, though I suspected it was really to showcase our newly landscaped backyard. I was working from home that day, half listening to their conversation through the open window while finishing quarterly projections. The shift in Samantha's tone when Jessica mentioned her surprise gift was subtle but unmistakable. like a temperature drop before a storm. Throughout lunch, Samantha kept circling back to the car, asking detailed questions that grew increasingly pointed. Did he get the extended warranty? Those German cars can be so expensive to maintain, she'd said, false concern dripping from every word. After Jessica left, Samantha was uncharacteristically quiet. I knew better than to think this was the end of it. Sure enough, that evening, while I was reviewing client portfolios in my home office, she appeared in the doorway. We need to talk. About my car situation, she began, casually leaning against the doorframe. The Range Rover is having issues. I glanced up. What issues? We just had it serviced last month. It doesn't matter what issues, she said, waving her hand dismissively. The point is, it's not meeting my needs anymore. What followed was a familiar dance, me pointing out logical considerations. The Range Rover was barely 2 years old. We'd agreed to focus on investments this year. The market was down. Her countering with emotional appeals that gradually escalated to comparisons with other couples. Jessica's husband doesn't make her justify basic needs, she said, voice rising. He understands what it means to take care of his wife properly. I set my laptop aside, genuinely confused. Since when is a brand new BMW a basic need? Your car is worth $92,000 and runs perfectly fine. That's not the point. She was pacing now. The point is that you clearly don't value me the way other husbands value their wives. I felt the familiar tension headache forming. Samantha, I've never denied you anything reasonable, but this isn't about the car. You're right, it's not about the car, she interrupted. It's about respect, about showing the world that your wife is worth investing in. The conversation devolved from there, with Samantha bringing up past grievances, vacations we hadn't taken, jewelry I hadn't bought, the promotion I hadn't received last year. When I tried to explain our actual financial situation, still excellent but not unlimited, she cut me off with the ultimatum. Figure it out, Michael. Until there's a BMW X7 in this garage, Arctic white with caramel interior, you can sleep on the couch. A real man would make this happen without all these excuses. I sat there, genuinely torn between arguing back and simply walking away. After 12 years, I recognized the pattern. If I engaged further, the fight would escalate until one of us said something unforgivable. If I acquiesced, I'd be setting a new, dangerous precedent. So I chose a third option. Temporary retreat. I need to finish these projections, I said quietly. We can discuss this when we're both calmer. Nothing to discuss, she replied, already turning to leave. Couch or BMW, your choice. That night, trying to get comfortable on our ridiculously expensive but impractical Italian leather sofa, I scrolled through social media to distract myself. A post from Emily appeared, a photo of her Sonata being towed, with a rueful caption about saying goodbye to an old friend. Transmission finally gave up. Repair estimate more than the car's worth. Taking applications for transportation alternatives. Must be cool with dinosaur toys in every crevice, and occasional Jurassic Park roars from the back seat. I stared at my phone for a long time, an idea forming that I couldn't quite dismiss. Not out of spite or revenge, but from a place of clarity that felt almost like waking up from a long, confusing dream. The next morning, I called my financial advisor to discuss liquidating some of my personal investments, funds I'd maintained separately since before our marriage. Then I reached out to a client who owned a luxury car dealership. By afternoon, I was reviewing paperwork, feeling a strange mix of anxiety and liberation. For 6 days, I continued sleeping on the couch. Samantha alternated between icy silence and pointed comments, each night making sure I knew exactly what I was missing by not meeting her demands. Once, she even accidentally dropped her silk robe while walking past me, then laughed when I looked up. Sorry, not available for non-providers, she'd said with mock sweetness. On day 7, I left for work earlier than usual, placing a BMW key fob on the kitchen counter before leaving. The dealership logo was clearly visible against the granite. I spent the entire day with my stomach in knots, both dreading and anticipating what would happen next. Updated, clarifying a few things from comments. Yes, the money came from my pre-marriage investments, disclosed during financial planning. Emily initially refused the car, saying it was too much. Took 3 conversations to convince her. I'm surprised how many of you recognize similar patterns in your relationships. Anyone else struggle with setting boundaries until it's almost too late? When I arrived home that evening, Samantha was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes red-rimmed but makeup still perfect. The key fob sat untouched on the counter. You actually bought a BMW? She said, voice unnervingly calm. I did, I replied, setting down my briefcase. And when were you planning to tell me it wasn't for me? I paused, genuinely surprised. You already know? She let out a sharp laugh. The dealership called to confirm the delivery address for tomorrow, for Emily. Her voice cracked slightly on her sister's name. My own husband bought my sister a luxury car while making me sleep alone for a week. I felt a flash of guilt, then pushed it aside. I didn't make you do anything, Samantha. You're the one who banished me from our bed over a material object. So this is punishment? Some sick power play? I shook my head, suddenly exhausted. No, it's recognition. Emily's car died. She's a single mom who needs reliable transportation for work and for your nephew. When was the last time you even asked how she was doing? Don't you dare make this about Emily! Samantha's composure cracked. This is about us. About you going behind my back to spend our money on my sister. It wasn't our money, I said quietly. It came from my personal investment account, the one I had before we married. Her eyes widened. You've been hiding money from me? Not hiding, maintaining separately, with your knowledge. It was in our financial disclosures when we did estate planning 3 years ago. This detail clearly threw her. She'd signed those documents but obviously hadn't read them carefully. Her tactics shifted immediately. You should have discussed this with me first, she said, voice softer now. We're supposed to be partners. The irony of her invoking partnership after her ultimatum wasn't lost on me. Like you discussed the sleeping arrangements with me? Or how you unilaterally decided we needed to buy you a new car despite our agreement to focus on investments this year. What followed was hours of circular argument, Samantha cycling through anger, tears, accusations, and finally, attempted reconciliation. She called her parents, expecting reinforcement, but was shocked when they didn't immediately take her side. You already have a perfectly good car, I heard her father say over speakerphone. Emily's been struggling for years. Maybe you should be thanking Michael for helping your sister instead of attacking him. Later that night, after the storm had somewhat subsided, Samantha came to the couch where I was still preparing to sleep. She'd changed into the silk nightgown I'd given her for Christmas, hair freshly brushed, wearing the perfume she knew I liked. I overreacted, she said softly, sitting beside me. I was just surprised and embarrassed. Come back to bed, and we can talk about this properly. I looked at her, truly conflicted. Part of me wanted to accept this peace offering, to fall back into our familiar pattern. The easier path would be to reconcile, to pretend this was just a bump in our road. But something had fundamentally shifted inside me. I think I need some space, I said finally. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Her expression hardened. Because of a car? You're choosing my pathetic sister over your wife because of a car? This isn't about the car, Samantha. It's about what the car represents. It's about how easily you used our intimacy as a bargaining chip. It's about realizing that I've been enabling behavior that isn't healthy for either of us. The next morning was Saturday. I was making coffee when my phone rang. Emily, her voice was shaking. Michael, there's a brand new BMW being delivered to my driveway, she said. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. It's not a mistake, I replied. Your car died. You need reliable transportation. This is insane. I can't accept something like this. It's too much. I was going to lease a used Subaru or something. Emily, please. You've never asked for anything, even when you needed help. Let someone do something for you for once. There was a long pause. Samantha will hate this. She'll think I put you up to it somehow. Samantha and I have bigger issues to work through. This isn't about her. After more protests and 2 more conversations over the weekend, Emily finally accepted the gift, though she insisted on paying me back somehow, someday. The dealership delivered the car, not the top-of-the-line model Samantha had demanded, but a practical X3 in dark blue, nice enough to be reliable for years, not flashy enough to seem like an obvious statement. The fallout continued to ripple through our social circle. Some friends took Samantha's side, calling me controlling for making unilateral financial decisions. Others, particularly those who had witnessed Samantha's materialism over the years, quietly supported my choice. Jessica, she of the white BMW, actually reached out to say she admired what I'd done. Apparently her husband had indeed bought the car as an apology for his affair, something Samantha had conveniently left out of her envy narrative. As the weeks passed, Samantha cycled through various strategies: rage, coldness, seduction, reconciliation attempts. She scheduled couples therapy without asking me, then was furious when I suggested we each start with individual counseling first. She tried to rally her friends to pressure me, only to discover many had grown tired of her complaints about her insufficient lifestyle. Eventually, after about a month of this emotional roller coaster, I sat down with her for an honest conversation. I think we should consider a trial separation, I said, as gently as possible. We've been unhappy for a long time, and this situation has just highlighted how differently we view our relationship. Is this about Emily? She asked immediately. Are you having some kind of thing with my sister? God, no, I said, genuinely shocked. This is about us, about how we've been relating to each other, about how we've both contributed to a dynamic that isn't healthy. This was the first time I'd acknowledged my own role in our problems, how my conflict avoidance had enabled her escalating demands, how my withdrawal had fueled her insecurity, how we'd both substituted material exchanges for emotional connection. To my surprise, Samantha didn't lash out. Instead, she started to cry, not the performative tears I'd seen so often, but something rawer, more genuine. I don't know how to be different, she whispered. This is how my parents taught me love works. It was the most honest thing she'd said in years. 4 months have passed since that night on the couch. Samantha and I are separated but moving slowly and deliberately toward whatever comes next. She's started therapy, real therapy, not just for show, and has begun examining the patterns she learned from her parents. I've moved into a furnished apartment nearby, giving us both space while we figure things out. The distance has provided clarity I couldn't find when we were living in the same house, surrounded by all the things we'd accumulated but never really valued. Emily is thriving with reliable transportation. Her son can make it to therapy appointments and activities without the constant anxiety of breakdowns. She's been able to accept a promotion that requires traveling between schools, something impossible with her old car. We've had several family dinners with her son, and while initially awkward, they've become a bright spot in this difficult time. The most unexpected development has been in Samantha herself. After the initial shock and anger subsided, she began a difficult journey of self-examination. She's reconnected with Emily cautiously, not immediately transformed, but at least making efforts toward genuine relationship. Last week, she even sold several of her designer bags to contribute to a fundraiser at Emily's school. A small gesture, but unthinkable, 6 months ago. During our last conversation over coffee, she said something that stayed with me. I always thought love was proven through what someone would give you. I never considered that sometimes love is shown through what someone won't give you, because they see what you actually need instead of what you demand. I don't know if our marriage can or should be saved. What I do know is that we're both finally doing the hard work of becoming healthier people, whether we end up together or apart. The transformation isn't quick or complete. She still has moments of entitlement. I still struggle with conflict avoidance, but it's real progress. As for me, I've learned that generosity without boundaries isn't really generosity at all. That sometimes the most valuable things can't be bought but can certainly be lost, and that occasionally, a car isn't just a car, it's a wake-up call about what truly matters in the journey ahead. Updated, 4 months later, and we're still figuring things out. Samantha's in therapy twice weekly, her choice, not court-ordered. Emily's son calls me Uncle Mike, who knows dinosaur facts, which honestly feels better than any promotion. Some asked if Emily and I might end up together. That's not where this is heading. Have you ever had to completely rebuild your understanding of what love should look like?